Hello and welcome back. This is Dawn and we've got a fun one today, y'all. So there are two holidays that I love creating for, and that is Halloween and Christmas. I am here for the gore and the gaudy. I think that these two holidays really give you the most creative license to have fun and do things out of the ordinary. So today I've pulled out several of the new lovely layers from Honeybee Stamps. I've got this Lovely Layers Mini Fall, I think Mini Fall Mums. Is that what this one is? Mini Fall Florals. It's got this cute little boot in here. It has a very Victorian vibe and kind of inspired where I'm going with this. Then I also pulled out the Lovely Layers. This is the Halloween front porch add-on, I believe, is something of that nature. Everything will be linked below, you guys. But this just has a lot of neat little components that we're going to use in a very different manner today. I'm going to show you how to take a look at some of these dies and use them differently than they were intended. So we're going to be using that one. I've also pulled out the previously released Sweetheart Roses here. This one, it creates these lovely roses. It's got an urn in it. Might use that. Spoiler alert, we don't. And then I also grabbed the Lovely Layers Scaredy Cat. Now this one is adorable, but I'm just going to be using a couple of things from this set to create my little decor piece. And then we'll also be using a new 3D embossing folder. Now this is the Tangled Web embossing folder. My favorite spiderweb folder on the market right now. Love this. I'll also be using the Vintage Flourish stencil, but we'll get to that a little bit later. For now, let's go ahead and jump in. And I'm going to forewarn you, there is a lot of ink blending on this, a whole lot of ink blending, but hey, I am a girl who loves me some ink blending. That is a good time in my book. But if you are not a lover of the ink blending, you could certainly do this similar technique with colored cardstock. So start with colored cardstock as your base. You'll see here I'm starting with the heel of my boot in a gray cardstock. This is a great shortcut. But if you wanted to, for all of your rest of your elements, if you know that you want them to eventually be darker, go ahead and start with a dark cardstock, and then you can do minimal shading. All right, me, though, I'm a glutton for punishment. I love complete control over the amount of color, the depth, the shadows. So here we go. I've got a number 10 Be Creative blending brush here from Honeybee Stamps. I'm using Pumice Stone Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to start adding a little bit of grunge to this boot, okay? We're doing a White Witch theme here, and I want everything to be in a cream, white, or brown color palette. I love... Y'all, my house is, I call it 50 Shades of Beige. There's a lot of white, cream, and tans. It is what it is. And I love, love, love this color palette, especially for Halloween because it's a bit unexpected. So I'm using that pumice stone here to dirty up this boot a little bit. This witch, she's been around the block, okay? She's not a young one. She loves these boots. These boots have been doing some walking, and so they've got a little wear and tear on them. So I'm using that pumice stone to do my shading. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit of black soot on a cotton detail blending brush here. Again, it will be linked below. Just to add a little bit more shadow now. I still want the boots to read as white or cream boots in the end. However, I don't want them to look like they're in pristine condition. You'll notice that I like to check my work as I go. I can always continue to add more color to build up or intensify any color, but I can't take it away. So I like to repeatedly check my progress and then just add more as needed. I repeated the same process here for the heel of the boot, and I'll just build that up so that it's a deep gray. And then I can move on to a fun little trick. So remember I told you we're going to use the Tangled Spiderweb here. You'll see that this is broken up and it's got a large spider web in the middle, and then around the edges it's got some smaller little web details. So you can add this spider web detail to any of your die cuts. And I thought it would be cool to add this little pattern to our witch's boot. So I'm going to move it around the folder and determine exactly which part of the folder I want to use to create my pattern here. And because there's a lot of different options here on this folder, it's not just one web, I can really customize exactly where that web is going to go on the boot. And I really like this portion here in the corner because I like the way you've got this little detail here that lines up right at the heel of the boot. Just matches the silhouette so perfectly, it's almost like it was made for it. So I'm just going to go ahead and send this through my platinum, and that's going to emboss that pattern into my boot, and check it out. How freaking cool is this? Like, I want a pair of these boots. I don't know where I'd wear them, but I want them. All right, so now it's just time to adhere the pieces together. I'll use liquid adhesive, and these are really easy to put together. Just 4 layers, so we'll put that, the top layer, and then the laces, and then our boot is done. So off camera, I went ahead and created another boot because I knew I would be using them as a pair in my final composition, but I needed something to set them on. I didn't want them to just be floating here. So I grabbed the Lovely Layers Following Porch add-on, and previously when I was playing with this, there's the front doors here. I had cut them out to test them, and they were on their side. And when I glanced over and looked at it, I thought, you know what? If I glued those doors with a little bit of space between them and turned them on their side, they look a whole lot like a side table. Like these are drawers in a desk or something. So I was like, that's an idea, but the scale wasn't quite right here. The boots were a little too big, and it didn't come off as a piece of furniture like a hutch or something that these could be sitting on. But if you take a look at the door panel by itself, kind of looks like the spine of a book, and all of that intricate debossed detail on this actually kind of reminds me of a very old book where the things were very, very decorative, right? Like a leather bound book. So I was like, well, I want some different size books. So I grabbed the die again, and these side windows, the base for the windows, look like books. So now I have different size books here that I can line up side by side, and these decorative embossed ones, they could be spell books, right? They kind of have that vibe. So I didn't want to line them up behind it. Again, I wanted something to ground my boots, so I thought I could stack the boots on top of each other and then just set the boots on top, and I actually really, really love the way this looks. So that's what I ended up going with. Now we need to decorate around these, and the little sweetheart roses would be perfect. I grabbed some Spellbinders Dune cardstock, and I cut the base with all of the leaves and the stems from that. Now you might be asking, like, Dawn, brown leaves? Yes. I actually want this to look a little, for lack of a better word, decayed. I want them to look like they're drying out. I want that spooky, eerie, gothic vibe. So these brown leaves were perfect, and I think they fit in great with the color combo. So I went ahead and took a little bit of frayed burlap and kind of just haphazardly put some color down over that dune just to add a little bit of differentiation of color. And then I'm going to take some black soot, and I'm going to add that in some areas here and there to just kind of age the leaves. I want these to look very aged, and I don't know, it's just the vibe I was going for. I love this color combo for Halloween. It's very unexpected. You usually think of something dark for Halloween, the dark spooky colors, but I like kind of doing that unexpected brighter like whites. I think it comes out more creepy for some reason. All right, so after using the black soot, I needed more brown. So I grabbed the Ground Espresso Distress Oxide, and now I'm coming in with a smaller detail, Be Creative detail brush here and adding a little more targeted detail. So I'm going to darken up areas to make the leaves pop forward or to push them to the background. And then again, come in and add black soot wherever necessary to deepen it up even more. I want lots of detail here. See, you can see how gorgeous. Isn't that just kind of eerie, kind of Victorian, Gothic? I don't know. Maybe I'm way off. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Do you kind of like this vibe? It's kind of haunting. That's what it gives me, a haunting feeling. I love it. Okay, so I have die cut the layers to create our roses here, and keeping with our neutral palette, I decided to go with white roses. Now, if you've been here a minute, you know that last Halloween, I used the large rose lovely layers to do a gothic red rose. And many of you asked me how I would do white ones. So spoiler alert, I loved how this turned out so much that I did do some white roses using that large rose die. So if you're one of the ones who was interested in that, stay tuned. That video will be coming soon. I don't know if I'll get it up before Halloween, but white roses are something you can use all year round, and they're especially beautiful for like wedding cards. So definitely stay tuned for that. So just like the boots here, I used pumice stone, a little bit of frayed burlap, and then just what was left on my brush with the ground espresso. So I was able to come in here and just add a little bit of variation in color for these roses. And again, in some areas I did go harder with that ground espresso because I was going for the fading rose as it's starting to die back. All right, I went ahead and cut the witch hat here. This is from the Lovely Layers Scaredy Cat, and you can make the little kitty cat in there wear a little witch hat. Now, this isn't the exact right scale. However, I think that in the end, it's all going to work together. I wasn't sure if I was going to use it at this point, but I went ahead, colored it up the very same way that I did the boots, and then I have it on hand and something to build my scene with should I need it at the end. So I went ahead and took care of that. Then these little spider webs, I cut them from white, and again, this is from the Following Porch add-on, and then I'm just going to dirty it up a little bit, add a little bit of pumice stone, and then using just what's left on that ground espresso brush, I'm going to add some of that in here. Again, just dirtying it up a little. I don't want that stark white. All right, so once I was done with this, it was time to work on the background, and I was not sure exactly what size my finished project was going to be. So I have a half sheet of cardstock here, and I've got the Vintage Flourish stencil here. This is a damask pattern. This is also from Honeybee Stamps. And this is only a 6x6 stencil. However, it's a repeating pattern, and repeating patterns are very easy to just shift the stencil to cover more area. So I just made sure that I had it lined up straight so that it would be easy to shift that stencil once I get this top portion done. Just like before, we're going to do some ink blending. I already warned you guys, a lot of ink blending in this video. I love me some ink blending. This is no surprise to most of you, unless you're new here. And if you are, well, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you. Hopefully you're enjoying. All right, so pumice stone it is. I'm going through with an uneven inking here. So I'm going to go heavier in some spots and much lighter in others and allow the pattern to just kind of fade out. Then I'm going to pick up a smaller blending brush here and just add a little bit of, I think this one is the frayed burlap. So it's just the dirty brush that has a little bit of that frayed burlap on it. And I'm going to add that in some areas here and there. Again, this is just going to add that worn, dirty look. I want this to look like old, worn wallpaper. Okay, once that top portion is done, I'm just going to lift the stencil and then I'm going to shift it down and match up the pattern. So some of it will overlap, and that's fine because it's the exact same pattern. And then I'll just repeat all of those previous steps here to fill up the rest of this cardstock. Super easy, and it gives a beautiful effect. To clean up the edges here, I'm just going to take that pumice stone and kind of blur the edges. Just add a little bit of that pumice stone here and there. Again, can't stress it enough, we're going for that old worn look. All right, so now that I have all of my main pieces, I can go ahead and start kind of dry running my design. I like to have all of, well, the main pieces of everything that I think I'm going to use built, and this will give me more elements to kind of try out and play around with, even if at some point I decide to change up some of the colors of things, which I do in this case. So instead of doing 2 white books or 2 cream books, I ended up making 1 book black in the end. It just felt like it needed something, a little bit of heavier color at the bottom. So here though, because I have all of my main pieces, I can get the kind of general idea for what I want to do. You'll notice that I haven't glued my flowers into place yet, and that's because once I glue them down, I'm kind of stuck with them there. But if I wanted to, I can cut this into pieces and not use them on their stems. I can just use the flower heads with some of the leaves. So until I know exactly that this is what I want to use, I'm going to wait to glue those flowers in place. I do end up really liking this general layout here, and you could use this exact layout and be done. Add a sentiment if you wanted to make it a card. I think that looks really beautiful. But I wanted to take this more in a home decor piece, and I did want to grunge it up a little bit more. Looking at it here, I actually really like the brightness of this, and I think that keeping the background a little cleaner actually draws the eye into the center area, which would again make it great for a card focal point. But you know me, I don't know when to stop, and I just can't help myself. I just can't help myself, you guys. So I went ahead and grabbed a piece of chipboard here. So this is a nice thick artwork backer. So I buy them in bulk, and they are to put into a cellophane sleeve with your artwork when you mail so that it doesn't bend. That's what I use for all of my chipboard. It's pretty inexpensive. I think I get this from, it might be Clear Bags. I think I order it in bulk from Clear Bags. This one is a 5x7, and I'm going to adhere my stenciled paper here to the front of this. So I'm using some multimedia matte and a paintbrush, and I'm just adding this to the center right now of this chipboard. I'm going to adhere this in place, and then I'm going to rip around the edges. So I want to leave the edges free. So I've just covered the middle area of the chipboard, and now I'm using my bone folder to kind of burnish that paper to the chipboard here. And now I'm just using my hands here to rip the edges, to rip the paper. On the areas that I want it to go all the way to the edge, I'm folding the paper back against the chipboard, and that'll create a crease. That'll help me, it'll help make the tear easier and all the way out to the edge. Then I will tear towards me on certain areas to create that raw edge of the paper. So here you can see I'm just going to work my way all the way around. I want that nice uneven edge. And then once I've torn all of the edges, I'm going to come back in with that paintbrush and the multimedia matte, and I'm going to brush some more adhesive up under there. So that'll make sure that all of my edges are securely adhered. But I wanted to leave those, I wanted to leave all of the outer perimeter free to allow me to easily rip. And then I can just simply fold back the edges that are still loose and tuck some adhesive up under there. Then I came in with a blending brush and a couple different inks. Again, we're going to keep with that pumice stone, the black soot, and the ground espresso, and blend those edges into the paper so it looks pretty seamless. If I want to add any more tear to the paper or anything, I can use my tweezers to kind of grab the paper and pull it back or rip it a little bit. And in the areas where it reaches all the way to the edge, I'm using a sanding block here. I think this might even be a drywall sander. I stole it from my husband, don't tell him. I'm just going to sand the edges of that paper. And the nice thing about this is you can see I'm coming up into the project with that sander because it's such a fine grit. It's just going to sand off like a top layer of the paper in some areas and sand off some of the stenciling. And it just really helps marry the chipboard and the paper together. So I'll do the same. I'll do this all the way around the project, and I'll even take it up into the middle of the area in some spots. And then I'm going to, again, come in and add some ink blending around the edges. So you can see here I'm adding in some of that ground espresso and deepening up some of those corners. I'm rolling some of the edges of the paper. And I will just continue this same technique all the way around until I've got that outer edge looking how I want it to look. Again, old, aged, and worn. Now that my base was all complete and prepped, it was just time to start adhering everything. Again, I had my general idea of where I wanted everything to go, and I just started adhering. I started adhering with the back pieces first. So I'm going to use a mix of liquid adhesive and foam adhesive. Some of the leaves, I want them to pop up, so I put foam adhesive behind those. My stack of books, I went ahead and glued those all together and then added my foam adhesive to the back of that so I could move them as one unit. And then here for this little book, I wanted it to be a little bit more sturdy, so I just adhered a piece of cardstock behind it and then cut it down. Nobody's going to see it, so this will just give it a little bit more thickness, a little more heft. So this looks like it's propped up against those books that are laying flat. Again, some foam adhesive to the back, and then we can adhere that in place. And once I had all of my main pieces adhered into place, it still felt just a little bit off. So I grabbed that hat that I had created and I tried it in a couple of different places, but for some reason the upper left-hand corner looked bare. I felt like I needed something over in that left-hand corner. And if this was a card, that would be a great place for the sentiment, but I knew that this was going to be a decor piece by this point, and something wasn't right. So what I ended up doing was cutting another one of the rose stem pieces and cutting it in half. So I used one piece in the upper left-hand corner there to come in from off the page. And then I still felt like it needed more visual weight at the bottom. So I used that leftover single stem there. I laid it at the bottom of the books, but more importantly, I used a dark color to bring some visual weight to the bottom. So by switching out that white book to the black book, it really does help to draw the eye from lightest to darkest, and it's going from top to bottom. So it really helps to ground the entire scene. Additionally, using that black book helps to add a little bit more contrast here. So even though I intended for this to stay light and then to use the creams and the browns, because I had the grays in there, there wasn't quite enough contrast between the grays and the creams. So that black really helps to bump up the contrast. Now, what am I doing over here? You're asking. You're like, Dawn, you're talking to me about all of these things I don't care about, but I need to know what you're doing with these spider webs. Okay, so for the spider webs, I'm just adding glitter to them. I'm going to take it, I'm going to tap it into some embossing ink, and then dip it into this frosted crystal. This is some Tim Holtz Distress Frosted Crystal. I'm going to use my heat gun here. I'm going to melt that powder. I'm going to over melt it. When you over melt the frosted crystal, it turns tacky or sticky, and then I'm going to dunk it into some rock candy glitter. Then I'm going to heat set it again. That is going to trap that glitter in the frosted crystal, and now I have a no shed glitter little spider web here. Holds it in place perfectly and is the perfect fun addition to this. So this almost finishes the project. I did add a couple of things, and here she is. So let's go ahead and review everything here. We've got that gorgeous background that we created using the Vintage Flourish stencil, that nice discoloration around the edges there. We've got our boots. You can see I've added more of that rock candy glitter in various places. That beautiful texture we added with the Tangled Web 3D embossing folder. Those doors that we turned into books. I love reimagining dies. One of the most versatile tools in your craft room, if you ask me. And then you'll also notice that I added a little pumpkin there on the lower left. That's also from the Lovely Layers Scaredy Cat. And I also found a place to put that little witch's hat there. I just rested it on the corner of the boots there, and I couldn't be happier with how this turned out. A lot of these techniques were new to me, so a lot of them were out of my comfort zone, and I had so much fun. Really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in seeing the Lovely Layers roses done, the large roses done in the white, make sure that you're subscribed and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of my future uploads. All of the feature products will be listed in the description box below. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.